kind of in the little eyes. Okay. Well, we'll be waiting for folks to get in a little bit. I know we're a little early this week. We had to adjust this week for some travel, but hopefully we'll be back to our regular. Well, I don't know because that next week is my possible jury duty. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
That's funny. Hi, Paul. Hey, girlfriend. You want to sit her on the pillow?
Yeah, I'll sit her up high.
Just a little floating head. And just in case. She did pee.
Oh no! Was I leg wet again?
Let me see.
Are you serious? Y'all, this is literally the third or fourth time this little girl has peed on me this weekend. Okay. Oh, I don't know why.
Here, let me change it. All right, I gotta change my little pee monster. What is going? There is something.
Yo, she really has peed on me 4 times. 3-4 times.
So why do you keep peeing on your godmom?
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, you know,
want a baby wipe?
I'm cool. It don't matter. It's not that much. It's not like it was the first time, y'all. Cara said I'm a magnet. Yes. Well, what I like to believe, what other people told me this weekend, is that it means that she's comfortable with me, and so she just be letting it go. Not that I want to be peed on, right. But yes. No, girl, did I? Oh man. That you are not needed for jury duty. I hope I'm not needed for jury duty, but it's funny because I had a conversation with my therapist today, and I haven't. It's just I've gotten y'all. Okay, so this is the thing. I got this first jury duty summons in 2020. Okay, when I was living in South Africa, and I have literally been deferring for all this time, so I'll probably be able to defer it again, but. No, because it's like no questions asked. But I was having a conversation with my therapist about it this morning because he was like, "No, you have to do your civic duty." I was like, "I don't believe in it." I know. I was like, "I don't believe in it." I said, but beyond that, I said, I don't believe in the prison industrial complex. So even if somebody were guilty, it doesn't matter what evidence were presented to me. I'm not participating. So hopefully, what
if it's a white person that murdered a black person?
Again, that's what principles are for. And so if principally, it's not that I am saying that he would not deserve some kind of retribution, punishment, whoever it is, but it's against my principles. So I will not do anything to that. Yes, and it's true. It is true, Erica, that us not being there has effects on the outcome. But I'm also in Massachusetts. I don't know what it's going to look like. I've actually never done jury duty before. But if it happens, we shall see. Let's see who else. Hopefully they send your email. This is what that is. Okay, what is that? Rendani, that's what I did. Deferred forever, and they finally said you can't defer anymore. Yeah, but how long did you defer? Because legit, it's been 4 years. Now, I will say, for 2 of those years, I was living out the country, so the deferral was I guess legitimate in that case. And even some of the other ones, like the particular days that I was assigned, I just couldn't. What else did you say? Oh yeah, we saw that in Keith Davis' trial. No, I mean it's obviously true that we need to be there. Insofar as those trials exist and they are determining people's lives, and us not being there can create more issues. But I don't know. I also never got called for jury duty ever before I moved to Massachusetts. I lived in North Carolina my whole life up until 32, 33 years of age, and never got called for jury duty. But anywho.
See, okay. It's funny that you don't vote and you're registered to vote.
But you know why I'm registered to vote.
Why you're registered to vote. See, that's why I'm not getting married.
Yeah, y'all. My ex-husband was very into electoral politics, and that is how my name got thrown in there. So we shall see. You said, how does one get chosen? I'm probably on that bitch's bias list. I don't know why I wouldn't be, though. But I do think it has something to do with voter registration. I really do believe that. Because
you have to be registered to vote.
Yeah. All right, y'all. I think we're ready now. Hopefully I don't get peed on again.
Yeah, let me.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hold on for now.
You want the pillow?
Sorry about that, y'all. No, I'll just cross my leg.
All right.
Sankara is back.
Okay, y'all. So yes, I think most of y'all are already in here, but we are at an earlier time today just to accommodate for some travel that Sharice has this week. Hopefully we will be back at our regularly scheduled time. Like we said, we want to, keep it consistent and at least have something every Monday. We may move the windows as times go on, but we'll try to be as consistent as possible and stay as close to that window.
Y'all, my baby's teething, so if she starts crying, mind your business. She teething.
Very hard.
Yeah.
Teething and peeing.
But not pooping very much. But they do say, like, I've been reading up on it, and she's, breastfed babies, I guess, don't poop as much because they say breast milk is like a perfect food. So like they just hold on to most of it. But she's been peeing so much. It's really wild. So
yeah, my left leg has gotten the brunt of it.
Yeah. she's 4 months. She turned 4 months on the 13th. So she's growing, and she's a grower and a shower. Anyway. Okay.
Not a grower and a shower. What is wrong with you?
All right. So comments.
Okay. So the first comment we had, so these are comments from the last 2 episodes, so 1.4 and 1.5. The first is from Michael T, who said, yes, we'd love to discuss Du Bois' view on Zionism. Obviously, that is what we did last week. So hopefully you were able to tune in. I don't always keep track of who all was in.
So Michael Anderson, 9106, I think that's the big homie, Michael, the UCLA brother. He said, I very much like this live format. Keep it up, y'all. Thanks for principled readings of the Zionist take on Davis's analysis. Also love Sharice standing on business about her work. And boo, Billy, Know Nothing Porter. Yes, boo, yes. Billy.
Although I watched a really good movie with Billy on the way back from Detroit last night. It's called Our Son. It's about a couple going through divorce and trying to decide about custody of the child and trying to work through their drama with each other to make sure they do what's best for the child. It actually was pretty good in the end. But he's an actor, and that's what he should be doing. And
right, stick to that. Stick to the fictional stories. Don't be trying to represent my man Baldwin.
Yes. Okay. So what is this? Raphael Outland. Sankara is so adorable. Yes, she is. Peace and love, sisters.
Peace and love. Michael T 425. Another one said, I'd like to see and hear a show focusing on the legacy of Bell Hooks.
I knew. That's why I let you read that one, because I knew you had something to say.
Well, you can like in one hand and shit in the other and see which one fills up first. I'll be down.
But
we bought those books.
Yeah, and I think but I also think it's worth it to have a conversation about the critiques. What is useful and what are some of the problematic, takes that she's had over the years, because, people can produce some good things and also have really problematic takes on the other hand. And that is what needs to be acknowledged. Okay. So Frida Land, last episode, y'all said something along the lines of the right reads us and the right reads us and they read them. What would you consider reading party of the
white rights reading list?
I always forget that that's white, of the white rights reading list, so we can be up on them. Y'all the truth, keep them episodes coming. Sorry, I don't know why that was so hard for me to read. How do you feel about that?
So I think well, the way that we can, I actually am on Truth Social. I haven't been very active. It's very raggedy. But also, like, I read Catherine Ballou's work about white supremacy. So I don't know, and that she's not a white supremacist, but she's writing about white supremacy, and so she's reading the things that they're writing. So I think that's important. But also, most mainstream stuff has some element of liberal racism or white supremacy. So I think that as long as if you read the New York Times and the Washington Post, you're good. So I just think it's, there's this whole, especially in academia, or maybe primarily in academia, there's this whole thing, like, we're not reading any more white males. And it's like, ignorance is no tool and no weapon. So I don't know why you would choose to not read them. Because we were talking about this over the weekend. Like, you know, the book FBI is by Max. His last name is Maxwell. About how the FBI read so much Black literature, right? And they actually have the largest collection of Black writings because they're reading our shit and they're reading and writing their own shit. And so we can't, being ignorant or being ill-informed there's nothing liberatory about that. Okay. Cool ocelot. Yay! Y'all responded to my comment and said ocelot correctly. You know why I know the word ocelot? It's from the show Archer. Archer used to be one of my favorite shows, and Carol/Cheryl had an ocelot. That's why I know the word. Anyway, I didn't expect life to be a struggle like this. I just picked this username over a decade ago as a middle schooler who thought ocelots were cool. Now I get to see the whole BPM extended universe get hooked on phonetics or just skip my comments. Dr. CBS, only one who gets it right. Not skip your comments. Like.
Because they can't read it. But the thing is, as soon as you said cool ocelot, it makes sense. Yeah. I don't know how did I read it before? I can't remember. But Ashe. Okay, so Kaylin9547 said, first off, thank you both for showing up how y'all do. CBS, will you eventually publish or share the critique of Afro-pessimism that was excluded from your book? Is there stuff already available publicly related to your critiques of AP?
You know, no, I haven't really published anything on it. I allude to it in the piece that I write about Ta-Nehisi, the piece, Why Claudia Jones Will Always Be More Relevant Than Ta-Nehisi Coates, that was published in Bar in 2017. That was her. I just said it right here. She's choking herself. Girlfriend, I swear, y'all, I'm not abusing my child. So, but I don't know, because I feel like I just don't care that much. Like, it's not something that I necessarily would want to like spend my energy on doing. But I do think a principled. I mean, there are many critiques that I think are good in principle. So Greg Thomas has one called, I think it's Blue Notes 2.0. That's a good critique of Afro-pessimism. So maybe, I don't know, but there's nothing out there right now. But it depends on how much time I want to waste. Oh, baby.
Right. Well, that's fitting because the next comment is Sankara is such a cutie, what a blessing. Yes. But I think, what do we say? She's teething. So
yeah, and drooling all up on me, all up on my ropes and shirt. That's okay. There needs to be a dialectical summation of the history of Black Lives Matter as a national phenomenon. That's from Michael T. 4275. You was active, Michael T. You had a lot of suggestions. Okay, so I don't know. Do you mean like a movement summary? Do you mean like an academic doing that? I suppose I agree. There needs to be like I think a good faith objective assessment of Black Lives Matter, and it's still ongoing, right? And just disaggregating the different aspects. There's like the renegade chapters, there's the grassroots, there's the robbery ring, the bling ring,
and there's Cornel West and Melina Abdullah.
Oh yeah, we forgot to put that in the revolution.
Yeah, okay, we'll come back to that. Okay, Ron 8410000 said, excellent podcast, very informative and analytical, while at the same time you invited us into your living room and you took your shoes off. I love it. Now on the serious side, I suggest you warrior scholars be weary of the following podcasters.
The comments on this page do not necessarily reflect our own opinions.
Yes.
These tweets are not endorsements.
Which says Brianna Joy Gray, Jason Miles, Pascal Robert, and sadly Jared Ball. When they show you who they are, believe them. They all have one or more of these characteristics: class reductionist to the detriment of confronting racism, attempt to please the white nationalists in their audience, a compulsory hatred for anything related to Black Lives Matter movement, despite the fact that many of them were frontline soldiers in Mike Brown, George Floyd, and Breonna Taylor rebellions, and some BLM activists were even assassinated in the struggle by fascist white nationalist militias. Continue, my sister's peace. I actually talked to my dad about this, and he was like, I agree with that comment about most of them. He does seem to believe that Brianna Joy Gray, it does have the possibility. He likes her.
Yeah, I know.
He follows her, and I think he believes that there's still potential there, and that she can still be pulled more to the left. I shouldn't say to the right. And I mean, I don't know. This is something that I think we've talked about a lot. We've talked about it in various ways. I think even in relationship to how I've been dealing with the Zionist student in my class, I think it kind of came up with some of the things that came up for us over the weekend. People are growing entities and they have to be pushed on things. And some people, when they are pushed, they come along, and other people are pushed and, show you that they're going to push back. And so, I think we take that comment. We appreciate the comment. We'll keep moving forward.
Cool, Osla. I guess commenter is unaware of lack of intellectual. Right. Yeah. We had Brianna Joy Gray on. It went how it went, but we had her on, and she had, I think, me on her show first, right? And I think
Ashley Knuckles said they just rewatched it.
Yeah. Oh, Ashley Knuckles, that is funny. My ankles ashy, my toes ashy. Like, I'm going to Phoenix, and I am not wearing open toe shoes because it's bad.
Oh, gosh.
Like, y'all, since having this baby, I let myself go. But that's okay. Okay. Anyways, So I think that the difference between my reception on her show versus her reception on our show was a little unsatisfactory for her. So I haven't heard from her since. But I got no smoke. I got no beef with her. I think that she's as far left as one can go, still believing in electoral politics. Mm-hmm. So there's, that's something.
Yeah.
That's something.
So the last comment is from Mark Dubb, which is more life, more study, more revolution. And that is what we are here to do. So we'll keep it up. All right. So for the life, you want to start? Or you want me to start? Talking the weekend.
Okay. So we went to, now I don't even know if we should say the name of the organization, but anyway, we did. We went to a political education retreat in Detroit over the weekend. It was internal. It was internal to the organization, and it was interesting, right? This organization gives me anxiety, and so there was aspects of it that I think were could have been like better organized just logistically. But that being said, when you bring together people who are committed and who have good ideas, it tends to come together no matter what, right? So, and we had a lot of good discussions. There were some great presentations. So my favorite, I don't even know if we should name everybody that was there, but anyway, there was
you can just do the content of the presentation.
Yeah, so there was a presentation about building a mass base by somebody who is a bona fide, committed organizer, relatively young. And I really appreciated what she had to say about mass-based building. She offered like critiques but also like solutions. Mm-hmm. Also, what is to be done. And so I really appreciated that.
Yeah. We unfortunately there was a session on self-defense, which we heard good things about. But we had to take a step out because CBS had a book talk that day. I did a session on patriarchy and attempting to sort of resolve internal gender contradictions in organizations, also learning from international organizations. CBS did a reading from Organized Fight Win. It was the Williana Burroughs piece. Which was and so a lot of what CBS went through was actually we doing a sort of slow read with the folks and figuring out what it actually means.
I'm here, y'all, just rocking my baby.
Figuring out what it actually means to engage in the process of political education and how to read. I think a lot of us, we know how to read, but then how do we read for particular kinds of content? What types of questions do we ask? How do we engage in particular kinds of way? And then also particularly when we are in organizations and we are attempting to do, like work study circles, or like this particular weekend, a political education retreat, what does it mean to read those things together? And how do you make sure that as an organization, you are getting what you want to get from those particular reading materials, but also pushing and utilizing them to push forward organizational positions, right? And so I think that folks thought that was a really useful exercise because she went paragraph by paragraph and asked folks, clarifying questions. And I think it was really revealing in that sometimes a paragraph that seems quite simple and straightforward actually does elicit a lot more than you realize. And if you don't take the time to engage that with your comrades, then you don't necessarily know where people are, where they're not going. And also that inside of organizations, it's our responsibility to help our comrades who are struggling with understanding concepts and or terms. And that's why we are organizing together, because it's not about what any one individual can do, but it's about making sure we are coming to some sort of collective consensus about what it is that we're trying to do, and we do that through work study.
Mm-hmm. And so it was interesting, right? Because there was a little bit of, there seems to always be in these spaces a dichotomy between kind of like political education and doing shit for the community, right? Yeah. That somehow people continue to see that as a tension. Mm-hmm. And I do think that part of our ongoing work is how to do that well. How do we satisfy the material conditions of our community while also doing what our work is, which is consciousness raising? And because of course that is what separates that's what separates sort of charities from political organizations, right? Mm-hmm. So we can do our backpack giveaways, our grocery deliveries, and all that sort of thing. But there needs to be more to it than that, right? Otherwise, because churches do those types of things, other types of entities do those things, and so it seems like there was a lack of clarity, especially, and I'm not not being ageist, but especially among younger folks about what the purpose of political education was. And, how do we do political education with the people without sort of stepping over them? Sorry, I'm my baby.
One of the other things that was really interesting, but one of the other things that was revealing itself as a sort of internal contradiction when we're having that as a part of that conversation is really, what is political education for? Like, what does it do, right? And so there were these conversations about the fact that, if people are hungry or homeless or whatever other, destitute in other ways, right? That they're not necessarily going to be concerned with political education. And I think there was an interesting conversation. There was an interesting tension because there was pushback against that. And I was one of the people that pushed back against that, because I think one of the comments that I made was that a part of what political education is supposed to be for us is that is what helps us determine our moral compass. That is what helps us determine when we don't have anything, when we don't have money, when we are homeless, when we are hungry, when we are jobless. What types of compromises are we still not willing to make, even when we don't have those things? And I think for a lot of people, their religious upbringing is what sets their sort of moral compass, their center. And I think for those of us who maybe are not religious but are engaging in political organization, this process of political education and work study is what allows us to be able to say, okay, even when we are struggling, how do we make decisions? And I think that's what's really important. Rendani said, I think when people are hungry and homeless, some can become even more engaged in political education. And I absolutely believe that. I was just telling them, over the years, I've gotten to, meet people and engage with folks in Cuba, in Guinea, in places where folks are way more in places where folks are way more destitute, and they're still, engaging in study. And it's actually one of the things that feeds them. And I don't mean that in a literal sense, but it is something that people, even as they're struggling, it is one of those things that helps give you hope, right? And so I think it is very important to think about, for us to not limit what people can take intellectually because of their material conditions. Mm-hmm. Right?
And it's funny. Yes, I am. I'm fighting for my life over here, Gio. This is our life now. Yeah. But and I also, it's funny how it never comes up about, I think actually having more money and affluence makes you less prone to political education, because it makes you more prone to be counter-revolutionary. And so there's a class reductionism or a class misstep in this idea that poor people or, working people are too busy to this or to that to actually take political education seriously. And what's funny is that most of these people are poor and working class. And it's like, you do political education. So what do you think sets you apart?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you think makes you so special? Do you think that you're just this anointed one that you can overcome your circumstances in political education, but the masses are not doing that? And so it's we need to do more work, struggle around that in our organizations, because it's a very common misconception. And like, there doesn't have to be, even if there are dichotomies in exit organizations between, like doing people's types of programs, right? Survival programs versus political education. It doesn't need to be that way, right? But oftentimes I think we do have to make those choices because of personnel, because of the way the organization is constituted, because of what we think, because of our conception of what is to be done. But there's nothing natural or inevitable about that, right?
Absolutely. So on that note, we decided that for study today, we will actually talk more about the importance of political education. So we will come back to that after we get through the life section.
Okay, hold on, y'all. Let me see if my baby will let me sit in the chair now.
I think she's falling asleep.
Yes.
So one of the other things we did while we were away, CBS had a book talk at Source Books, which you are more familiar with them, so I'll let you talk about.
Yeah, so Source Books is a bookstore. Alice, so I met Allison. I used to be part of this thing called Global African Worker. You submitted something to them a long time ago. You remember that? Bill Fletcher was over it. Good old Bill. So and so I met her through that, and she owns a bookstore with her mom called Source Booksellers. And so I did an Organized Fight Win talk there, hybrid with Jody Dean, when that book first dropped. And so when we were going to be in Detroit for hey y'all, when we were going to be in Detroit for this political education summit, I hit her up like, I'm going to be in town. Would you like me to do a book talk? And I'll be honest, at 6:30 when it started, it was like 3 people there, and I was like, "I'm sorry, y'all. Y'all stayed open late for this. Ain't nobody here." But it filled up.
It was full. It was
full
by the end.
Yeah. It's a small space, so it wasn't like 50 people. It was, but it did fill up. It was maybe 20.
It was at least 20.
Yeah. And so, so it was a good conversation. Geechee ended up being my interlocutor because Layla said she wanted to read the book more closely.
Let me tell you something. I know that it does not always come across this way, but I am actually a very anxious person. And so I have to feel prepared to the degree that I am comfortable with. And she asked me that the day of. Okay, y'all, that talk was at 6, and she asked me that at like 2. Yeah, like something like that. And I was like, but I still asked the question.
You did. You asked the question. And we have an event together at the Lucy Parsons Center on like the 28th or something of this month. 26th. So if you're in Boston, pull up, or the Boston area. And so I think it was a sort of mixed, kind of eclectic crowd. Sold some books. Geechee was the interlocutor, and Allison was excited about that because she watches Earn Your Liberation. And he was a good interlocutor. And Geechee has his own charm. What did he say that I had to explain what he said? Bartering bill. He said barter bill. He said bartering bill, y'all.
We also I spend entirely too much money on books in that bookstore.
Same.
But what I don't know if you mentioned it, I might not have been listening, but what's really cool about the bookstore is that it is it's a nonfiction bookstore.
But they do have children's books.
But they do have children's books, but they're still nonfiction. So like, I think, because I took a picture of it, one of them was like the bridge that Yuri built, Yuri Kochiyama, what is it? Am I right about that? Yes, the bridges Yuri built. So they do have, but I think apparently they only started doing children's books recently.
Right.
But they try to have children's books that deal with particular kinds of things, not all fantastical things. But I thought that was really cool. So I enjoyed that. I already mentioned the jury duty thing, so I'm not going to talk about it again.
By the way, one of my favorite children's books, for those of you who have kids, is A is for Activists.
I like that.
I like that book. It's a great book.
And I just want to tell y'all, if CBS ever tells y'all,
let me tell y'all what Layla's trying to make my baby, an anti-racist baby. I have the book Anti-Racist Baby. Guess where I got it from?
That is not who she got it from. So I have a friend who had the book who did not want the book. And you said you had not seen it, so you would want to look at it. So the friend who had it did not buy it. The friend who had it was gifted to her for her baby.
Colleague, I'm certain.
Yeah, probably. And she's like, I don't want this book. And Sharice was like, I would like to read it. But now it has resulted in Sharice telling everybody that I got anti-racist baby for my God baby. And I just feel like y'all should know that is untrue. But she will continue to tell people that lie.
Spoiler alert, it sucks. Because I did read it.
Anywho. Okay, so you got your warrants in there.
Oh, yeah, y'all. I'm fighting for my life right now. So, when you set your schedule for the semester or a quarter, whatever block of time you work with, I feel like we rarely take into account our future selves. And so we just like, yeah, we'll do this shit. And so this is the point in that calendar where it's like multiple things per week. So for example, I just got back from Detroit. I'm flying to Phoenix today. I get back on Wednesday, then Thursday we drive up to Providence, which is not far, but still it's just back to back shit. And I got a baby to deal with.
What is wrong with you?
I love my baby very much, y'all. Oh, and then she woke up and started crying. See, that's what I get.
We can't laugh too loud. She don't like when we laugh loud, y'all. And we both laugh very loud.
Yes, and she didn't like that. She was like, bitch.
Oh, you know what? Did you? Oh, okay. Were you gonna talk about that?
Yeah. So anyway, the upshot of this rant is that I was up all night last night finishing up my paper for the Warren Center. So I think I talked about how my fellowship at Harvard and everybody, so every other week we have a presentation. Well, my presentation is on the 18th. I was supposed to send them this paper on the 11th. Did not have it done. And so the admin emailed me last night, like, we need this paper by tomorrow morning because we need to send it out and give people time to read the paper. Mind you, motherfuckers don't be reading that shit a week in advance. They probably read it the day before or the morning of, let's be honest. So they got 3 full days to read it plus the morning of. So I feel fine about them getting it today. It's raggedy, but I got it done and it is what it is. But I, pulled an all-nighter and also still got to finish packing. And it's a crazy day, y'all. But
hence why we're on at 1:30.
Hence why we're on at 1:30. And I just have to remember, number one, don't treat a gift like a burden, right? I'm glad to have these opportunities. And 2 is this too shall pass. This time next month, I'll be talking about how, I ain't got shit to do.
So I have one other life update. Y'all know I had a Humanities Center fellowship at my university, and Sadia Hartman was the culminating speaker. This is not about Sadia. This is about the talk itself. Not the talk, but the dinner afterwards. So Sadia Hartman was the culminating speaker, and the woman who runs the Humanities Center now. So actually, the Humanities Center was in this past year taken over by a colleague of mine. His name is Angel Nieves. Unfortunately, his partner passed away from cancer I believe in the summer, and then he unfortunately had a massive heart attack.
Oh my God.
In the fall of last year and passed away. And so it's very tragic. He definitely died of a broken heart. It's very sad.
Oh my God.
And actually he had I think the Humanities Center was going to be doing some really cool, interesting things under him, but it just, didn't work out. So the person who was running it before, came back in as an interim director once he passed. This woman also runs the Jewish Center, the Genocide Holocaust Awareness Committee at my school. So there was a dinner after Sadia Hartman's talk. Y'all, there was only 4 tables. It was not that many people. It was like 30 people, not even that much. Because those round tables are 8 people, whatever. So she decided she wanted to assign seats. When I got to my table, I was the only Black person there. Now, mind you, y'all, this was a talk on a Thursday night. The talk was from, I think, 5 to 7, and then the dinner was 7:30 to 9. I had also taught that day. I had many other things that day. So, as you can imagine, at 7:30 after a fucking more than 8-hour workday, I don't want to sit at a dinner table with people that I don't know, don't have relationships. So I went and sat at another table.
The Black table.
I did sit at the Black table.
Spoiler alert.
This woman was very upset about the fact that I moved. And she even asked one of my other senior colleagues, why did she move? Her response, the person who was speaking on my behalf basically said, well, sometimes Black people don't like to be the only person at the table. And she was just really bothered by this, y'all. And I just do not understand. One, I don't understand the preoccupation with assigning seats at an event like that. AK, this is Dr. AK, one of my colleagues. Dr. AK was also at that event. We were sitting at the table together. So
she got assigned to the black table. So why did she make you Ruby Bridges? Why did you have to integrate the other table?
Listen, I don't know, but I absolutely have no problem doing what I need to do to be comfortable. And the thing is, we had a lovely time. Like, I think that probably also made it worse because we were all laughing and giggling at our table. And that just made me think about our many escapades whenever we are out trying to eat dinner or have fun and we laugh. And people are always like, you guys look like you're having such a great time. And it's always
white women. Like, they just want to colonize your joy. It's like, you cannot partake in this. Like, you decided to, y'all chose colonialism. Stick with that. Like, don't try to be joyful now. Shit.
Yes.
You go eat your cheese sandwich.
And we have another update on the Palestinian student protest. But I'm going to read a piece from the article that talks about it on my campus. But when I also realized that this woman had some problematic things to say about that, I was even less bothered by my decision to move. So.
Yeah. So anyway, y'all, OJ kicked the bucket. Rest in peace to the juice. Here's something that's interesting. Y'all know I love Mark Lamont Hill. I do. I fully admit it. Love Uncle Bobby's. Now it's interesting because somebody actually put him on blast because he was like, basically like, fuck OJ. Like, OJ died. Don't treat him like a martyr or a hero. And then somebody basically like disused him by posting, like, when John McCain died, he sent, and Meghan McCain was posting about her goofy ass daddy, and then Mark Lamont Hill replied like, sending you love and healing or something like this. And so it's just interesting, like, a war criminal with little pterodactyl hands gets more grace than the juice. OJ, and he didn't do it, y'all. So I mean, anyway,
what is wrong with you?
R.I.P. OJ.
Okay, so we have a slight corrective to make from last week. So last week when we posted just our
thumbnail,
the thumbnail about the show, we posted a map that was essentially attempting to indicate like which African countries had relations with Israel and or not. And then we got some pushback about having used that map. And I know they messaged you directly. So
yeah, so it was the comrade Philmon, shout out Philmon, who said, Philmon Zarai, who said, because on the map it had an Israeli flag inside of Eritrea, signifying that they had a diplomatic relationship. And he said, actually, they don't. Mm-hmm. And then he sent me 2 articles, one of which was Eritrea, I think, accusing the IDF of some type of war crimes. And the other one was from several years ago that was, saying that basically, something about like Eritrea and Israel being at loggerheads. So we just wanted to offer that corrective I Googled Africa, Israel, and that map came up. We liked the map. So we made it our thumbnail. But yeah, so we wanted to offer that corrective to Eritrea. Our bad. We fucks with you heavy. No AFRICOM, no Israel.
Yes,
okay. So
yes. And again, anytime stuff like that happens, we have no problem issuing these correctives. Okay. Yeah. So this is our last little life update. So I kind of alluded to this as I was already talking. So I had a former student of mine, reach out to me last week and was asking me to write basically a character letter for them because they had been involved in pro-Palestine, anti-Zionism protests on campus. And that particular student and a number of other students are now facing reprimands from the university, and so there will be a series of hearings. And so that student asked me to submit a letter on their behalf, which obviously I'm going to do. But I wanted to share, what that actually came out of. Where's this article? Okay, here it is. Okay, so I want you all to get a sense of actually what happened. So the title of the article is Jewish Students Organizations Disturbed After Posters Accusing Israel of Genocide Pasted on Chairs in Northeastern Classrooms. Chairs in several Northeastern classrooms were plastered with flyers reserving seats for Palestinians killed by the Israeli military April 3rd, prompting a committee within the university's Jewish Studies program to say it was disturbed by the incident. Now, I want to show y'all what the actual protests look like. They taped paper signs onto chairs in a classroom building. With the names of people who had been killed that day. Now, they did this during the university's genocide and Holocaust and Genocide Remembrance Week. Apparently, that it was also like that was initially called Holocaust Remembrance, but I think they added genocide to try to be more inclusive, whatever. But the irony of not acknowledging an ongoing genocide during Holocaust and Genocide Week is just beyond them, obviously. But I wanted to read in particular the comments from, where is her name? Okay, so the director of the Jewish Studies program said that she was most deterred by the misappropriation of the Holocaust and Genocide Awareness Committee's title. The most inappropriate part was the use of the logo to misrepresent what the work of the committee is wrong. She noted that several students contacted her to express their distress and concern about the incident. Quote, "I've heard from students who were just very shaken by it and felt there was something assaultive about it. Some people felt that this was targeted against Jewish people and that it was an attack on Israel." Well, first and foremost, it was absolutely an attack on Israel. And it is not, and an attack on Israel is not an attack on Jewish people, but we've already had this conversation. But this idea that it is assaultive when people are actually dying, and that students who, I mean, this is literally the most peaceful of protests, right? This isn't even
it wasn't even no people. It was literally just signs.
It was so ridiculous. And so now these students are facing, I don't know the extent of what they're facing at the moment because the hearings are going to happen this week. But also what's crazy about this is that the people who are going to be sitting for the hearing, not the students, but who are going to listen to the evidence, are neither faculty nor staff or students that are currently associated with the university. Apparently, this is supposed to be some unbiased committee of Northeastern graduates who are going to hear this information, which is also just absurd. So again, this is ongoing, and this, I am doing what I can to support the students that I know who are involved in these things, but I think it's gonna be a hot summer and a long academic year again next year. I don't anticipate these things cooling down anytime soon.
Free the guys.
Yes. Okay. So in the interest, so for the study portion, shout out to the comrade Ricky, Ryan, Erica. We wanted to actually go through a piece that Erica wrote about the importance of political education. It's an older piece, the importance of political education in class analysis. So we'll just go through and read it. It's not a very long piece, so we can read it fairly quickly. What does organizing look like when Black radicals are being pushed out of spaces for progressiveness that makes uncontested room for the centrist, right-wing, and fascist narratives driving most platforms? When examining the conflicts between those fighting oppression under capitalism and the capitalist state's ruling class alongside those who subscribe to success and riches obtained at the expenses of the oppressed, few things strike me as obvious disconnects and contradictions.
So I am often asked about my relationship with the analytical science of Marxism-Leninism as it pertains to my studies, teachings, and praxis, because it's somehow shocking that a Black woman would align herself with a political ideology that has been presented as predominantly white and male. I once used these moments as an opportunity to flex my knowledge on the historical relationship between socialism and communism and Black people, particularly Black women, as if I were a fact sheet. While it's important to highlight how many of those we've come to know as simply civil rights activists were politically and ideologically aligned with socialism and communism, what does that mean? Further, why is that important?
Knowledge is power is a familiar mantra. The Marxist theory of knowledge describes knowledge, or the idea of it, as socially constructed. Karl Marx details power, economic, intellectual, and political, as something that stems from the ownership of the means of production. Simply put, a lot of what we know is predicated on the interests of the ruling class. It is in this country's best interest to keep us ignorant.
One way we combat ignorance is through active study and dialogue. One of the most frustrating things is the way reading is discussed as a pastime of the elite. That in itself highlights how comfortably ahistorical we've all become. We discuss accessibility and ability to study, and by extension, obtain knowledge in bad faith. We fail to admit to our own intellectual laziness. It also highlights a misunderstanding of how knowledge and education should be used. Now, I think that that's important because, right, ableism, right, and access often are cited as reasons why people shouldn't read, I guess, right? That, I guess since there's blind people or people with intellectual disabilities or whatever, that to require folks to read is ableist. Mm-hmm. And I always point out the section in Robin Kelly's Hammer and Hoe, where he talks about how illiterate and semi-literate sharecroppers did political education. And part of how they would do that was that at the beginning, for 15 minutes during each meeting, they would read aloud. That comrades who could read would read aloud, and that it was a responsibility of comrades who could read to teach comrades who could not read how to read. This is the 1930s, y'all. Mm-hmm. Like, how have we gone backwards?
Yeah, it's wild. Marxist dialectics of theory and practice assumes that none of us are all-knowing, but the practice of becoming politically educated, both understanding theories and using them in practice to better conditions, ultimately improve and transform our conditions. One of the more famous examples of having done this can be found by studying members of the Black Panther Party for self-defense.
The BPP implemented collective actions that not only included providing much needed resources, but more importantly, a political education. They believed in active study and debate, and with that belief, went on to educate others enough to advocate for themselves.
When communities advocate for themselves through breakfast programs, liberation schools, and providing health care, the more prominent examples of the Black Panther Party's work, the group is prioritized over the individual. These small actions result in transforming realities, i.e. material conditions, are what the practice and principle of collectivism are rooted in.
This differs from individualism, which is dependent solely on the best interest of the individual. Black people en masse seem to be engulfed in a state of individualism. Many have actively disconnected from our history of collectivism and other tenets of socialism and communism. This is made obvious with celebrity culture, the fixation on Black capitalism as liberation, and blatant misrepresentations of our ancestors' wildest dreams.
The lack of implementing class analysis, recognizing the significance of class, to understand our material conditions are major factors of the collective distortion of our material realities. I am not speaking on the problematic and dangerous ways white leftists ignore whiteness as a class issue to generally state race and class and ignore their innate racial prejudices. I'm speaking on how our confrontations with racism as Black people have disallowed us to interrogate the Black people that exist within different class statuses. And that, this is something, I think I posted something today, or Ruha Benjamin was giving a speech at Spelman. And particularly making us understand, we all know this, but particularly making our audience understand that this continuing to look to the handful of Black folks who have ascended to these positions of power as if that means something for our collective liberation is such a misguided step, right? And we know this is all skin folk and kinfolk. We have Black women in power who are doing more harm to us than some of our white enemies, right? And so this is something that we have to constantly remind ourselves of, even to the degree that we have our sort of we cannot be uncritical even with our sort of desires to have a kind of Black nationalism, right?
The lack of implementing class analysis, recognizing the significance. I read that. Oh shit. We live in a white supremacist, capitalist, imperialist patriarchy. That's a lot. Shout out to Bell Hooks. So Black people are undoubtedly confronted with how oppressions manifest, particularly racism. Unfortunately, we do not leave room to have any introspection on how oppressions manifest through class. All Black people may experience racism, but not all Black people experience poverty. When overwhelming many experience poverty, combating racism solely causes us to turn a blind eye to capitalism, imperialism, and colonialism. That blind eye results in a failure to not want to understand or implement a class analysis.
The purpose of class analysis is to clarify the agendas between classes. When we discuss the class structure of capitalism in Marxist theory, the capitalist stage of production consists of two main classes: the bourgeoisie, the capitalists who own the means of production, and the proletariat, the working class who must sell their labor power. If we are applying class analysis to our material conditions, we are acknowledging how these class groups work and function within our realities. When applying it to our communities, it is evident that the almost non-existent middle class would much rather align with the bourgeoisie or the rich rather than the working class. This presents huge contradictions, not just in organizing, but the way that we view liberation. Sorry.
In order for the bourgeois class to thrive, there must be an oppressed working class to exploit. If there are Black people who would much rather align with the rich, what does that mean for Black people under the thumb of economic oppression? How does that manifest when we are talking about Black political power?
Capitalist state ruling classes resist change. They disguise their arbitrary privileges and power behind lies, dogma, half-truths, and fallacies. This is most evident through the use of celebrity-driven and identity reductionist activism that uses socialist rhetoric to push neoliberal agendas that don't seek to transform the realities, but make them easier to digest and not disrupt the status quo.
In a society plagued by communities of individualists, how can we approach collectivism in substantial ways? We must have a principled commitment to political education, cooperation, and concern for the welfare of each other. Workers unite.
Let's see. And so this made me, so even this weekend, this political education retreat, it made me reflect on some of the other organizations that I was involved in as a younger person. As you all know, I'm a member of the AAPRPGC. And one of the first things after orientation that we do is we are attempting to sign people work study. We very much believe that it may not even be that folks who are coming in haven't read the things that we've read, but there is a difference between reading things and reading them with other people, right? Mm-hmm. And reading them with other people for the purposes of having a shared understanding of what your organization is trying to do, right? And so, like, I remember, I guess this is like grad school days. We had formed a little group. It was like Black International Solidarity. But one of our biggest struggles, it was myself and a friend of mine, Mazuba. We were pushing the folks in our group, and these are all college-educated people, pushing the folks in our group to have, what were we doing, monthly or bi-weekly? I think we were doing monthly reading circles together. And we struggled with getting folks to do that. And I remember even some other, I remember some of these things coming up when I was doing things with the Dream Defenders, some of the younger folks. Like, there's always this tension, like, oh, y'all just want us to sit around and read. Y'all just want us to sit around and talk. But the thing is, we have to have theories, principles, and ideas that we share that are animating either the types of demonstrations we have, the types of mobilizations we put forth. We can't, if we continue to just respond with our sort of, why am I not finding words? But with our sort of knee-jerk reactions to things, like, obviously, yes, people will mobilize. People will mobilize because people have a sense of the types of oppression they are experiencing. But organization, and those of us who fancy ourselves as organizers or activists, we need to be thinking about what are the systematic ways that we create an organizational position on how we engage in things, right? Or also even basic things, right? Like, so if we're going to have a demonstration, right? And we're in a place that requires a permit, what does it mean that we have to go to the state to request permission to be in this place to protest against this thing, to protest against the state, right? And that's not to say that we might not get the permit, right? Because there are all these things that are confining us, but we do have to have a sense and understanding, a shared understanding of how we deal with those things. Or let's say we do have the protest, and in the event that something pops off, and who do we call to intervene on things, right? We have a principal position. We're not calling the police to intervene on things, but those positions are things you arrive at based on understanding what your shared principles are, and you have to engage in study to be able to do those things.
Yeah, that praxis is theory and action, right? And I think it's also important to distinguish between like political education and reading groups, book clubs.
Yeah.
Now, that is not a shot at No Name Book Club at all, right? But I think that not all book clubs are political education, right? So people just want to get together and read and drink wine, and that's okay. Political education has a purpose, right? It's for the cultivation of ideology and consciousness raising. And so I think that that's also important. So how you engage in political education is important, right? So Layla talked about my presentation earlier, where it's like, You have to have content questions. You have to have critical questions. You have to have connective questions. You have to stop as you're going through the text and make sure everybody's coming along. You have to define the words. You have there's things that because it's not just about getting through the text, it's about understanding the text and then the discussion that it facilitates, right? And ideally, right, coming to a common understanding. It doesn't mean uniform, but like a common understanding of what we mean when we use something like peace. So for example, we know that for Black Alliance for Peace is not the absence of conflict, right? We come from the radical Black peace tradition, which is different. But if you just say Black Alliance for Peace, people might think you're like some fucking pacifist organization, and we're not. But it's through political education that we understand like what it is that we mean by things like peace, imperialism, colonialism, freedom, equality, liberation, whatever. And so, and I think that as a first step, it's okay to read by yourself if you're not, if you haven't found an organization or if there's pushback in your organization. But ultimately, the point is to do it collectively, so that again, it's to come to like a common understanding. Because I think that when you only study by yourself, there can be this sort of mastery of knowledge impulse that's not the same as political education, right? Knowing stuff is not the same as coming to consciousness.
Okay. I think we don't have to do that. We can just
okay. So, okay. Do we want to say like for next week?
Oh yeah, but do we want to do this or what we talked about?
No. Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. So in that vein, we want to talk about our possible next things that we can read together with you all as viewers, as our invisible interlocutors. So what we decided we wanted to do was keep going with some of the hood communist stuff, but particularly because you all asked us to have Onye on, we were thinking that we would read some of Onye's work and then we could invite Onye to come on and we can have the conversation together. So we were thinking that we would propose to read a few pieces of Onye's. So one of them, it's not these, second one. So one of them that we definitely want to read is What is Revolutionary Pan-Africanism? So just want to show you all quickly. So that is one of the ones we want to read together. What is Revolutionary Pan-Africanism? There was another on gender.
Wasn't that on the first page?
Maybe. Oh, Winning Beyond the Gender Binary for Pan-Africanism. So those are the two. We're happy to read and engage more, but these are the two, and this is a little bit longer piece, so I think it should be good. So these are the two things that we would like to read. If you all want to read with us, we ask you to read those for next week. Hopefully we'll be able to get Onye on
either next week or
the following week. So that is our collective reading assignment for the next week.
Yes. And then just quickly, for revolution, we would be remiss if we didn't mention the Iran missile strike. And, for retaliation for Israel bombing its embassy in Damascus. And, Iran was very strategic and careful with the strike. I think it was basically a show of force as opposed to a real attack, because there was plenty of warning to allow, I guess, for Israel to prepare. Apparently it cost $1 billion to thwart that attack, and Iran spent like 1/10 of that in launching the attack. So that should tell you something. But we might be headed to World War III. And I think it's funny because also I think that same day or maybe the day after the bombing, I think Canada and one other country, I can't remember what it is, halted arms sales to Israel. And so people would like to think it's protest, but really, y'all, it's this armed struggle of Ansar Allah of Iran that is really moving the needle. So I think that we need to continue to speak up and be conscious of what's happening. But we cannot deny the fact that it is armed struggle, right? It is people standing on business that is making a difference, right? Yeah. That's
So the other thing that came across that came across I have a family group chat, and my aunt shared this with us today. So apparently, I don't know how many of you all know DeRay McKesson, obviously.
Puffy
vest do, but obviously it's about him in a way, but it's not about him. So the Supreme Court elected not to. So basically, what happened? DeRay McKesson organized a protest in Baton Rouge in the wake of Alton Sterling's murder, right? At that particular protest, someone who was in the protest threw a rock at one of the police officers. Their face got fucked up, whatever, and they essentially tried to sue DeRay McKesson. In the state of Louisiana, they basically ruled that DeRay McKesson, as the protest organizer, was responsible for the behavior of that person who basically was liable for that damage that was happening. And so, they tried to push it up, and the Supreme Court, refused to look at it. And so now that basically means that in Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas, there is basically a de facto rule that makes organizing protests impossible, because any person who organizes a protest would be considered responsible for any illegal behavior that occurs on any of those protests. And so that means that anybody who organizes a protest, it has to assume, liability for whatever happens. And we know that whether a protest is 15 or 20 people or hundreds of thousands of people, we do not have control over people who show up. And also we know exactly. I was gonna say some of whom are actually sympathetic to the cause, some of whom are not, right? And so to be able to do such a thing effectively, is a what do you call it? It cancels out our so-called First Amendment right, right? To what is it? Assemble. Mm-hmm. Yes. And so this is something to watch. I don't have a lot of faith in this country, period, obviously. But that is unconstitutional based on their own understandings of their laws and how they understand their freedom in this country. So I think that that's something for us to continue to watch, because it is potentially something that I think that will impact all of us, those of us who attend and those of us who continue to try to assemble people for the things that we care about.
Yeah, it's basically RICO by other means, right? One person is guilty, or it's using what one person does and criminalizing everybody. Mm-hmm. So it's crazy. Mm-hmm. To answer the question, yes, we can post the links to Onye's articles on our social media, yes. So on the Twitter and on our Instagram.
Yes.
No, God is true. It's not wearing pins or waiting for Beyonce to say Free Palestine.
Now,
that is not moving the needle.
Somebody did ask, do you want to talk about the Cornel West and Melina situation or no?
Oh, we can leave that for next week. Sorry, y'all. I got a flight to catch, but Here's a study question for y'all. What do y'all think? Come back with your opinions, your assessments of this debacle. Spoiler alert, of this debacle by Cornel West. Like, what do y'all think about him running with old girl? Because I asked Gerald Horn this question, and I will share cliffhanger. I'll share his answer next week. But let me know what y'all think about this as my baby turns up again. So.
Well, thank y'all for hanging with us, for coming in early. We had a good crowd today. What's the clown's clown? Mm-hmm. So yes, we will post those readings. Come back ready to discuss these things. Hopefully, Blu-ray, not Blu-ray vest. So please come back ready to engage with us next week. We will post the links to Onye's reading or writings, and hopefully we will be able to get Onye on in the next couple of weeks to talk with all of us.
Yeah.
All right, y'all.
Thanks for tapping in.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Not that bird.